What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another Monday night, an all-new edition of Chips and Dish here on the All About the Birds Network. I, of course, am your host, Chip Keggy, at Chip for the Birds. I am joined tonight by one of my very, very, very good coworkers, my good friends, one of the most brilliant men I know. And I'm not just fluffing him up here. He is actually this awesome. Mr. Kyle Boyer. I have to call you Kyle tonight. It's weird.
Yeah, I love it. I don't
Kyle, what's up?
I'm chilling, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. How's your summer going? Teacher to teacher, how's your summer?
Summer's been going good. I got a chance to get to Puerto Rico, so I'm good now. I can run on and see what the end's going to be.
You can now start to enjoy your July and your August.
Yeah.
Got a lot of comments rolling in early. We got Jason ready to rock, saying how it's going to be a good episode. I agree. We're talking about where this came from a little bit. Johnny, you checking in. Chipper. Adam's already sharing it now. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy. The missus chiming in, calling you the official Boyer.
Hey,
I said that I was going to have you on tonight, and she's like, he's one of my favorite people. And I said, I know. Mine too. So I got to pay the bills real quick. I talk about the sponsors, and then we'll get into some stuff. So All About the Birds is sponsored by many, many, many wonderful sponsors, including Statement Games. That is a fun, free twist on fantasy sports. There is a link in the bio, along with oddsjam.com, using their Arbitrage Calculator to not lose money. I still don't know what that word means, but arbitrage is such a great word that I have to say it all fancily. Of course, the All About the Birds, aatbirds.com/shop for all of our designs. We've got some new designs coming in, so be on the lookout for that. 99jersey.com. Use the codes AATBirds20 for a 20% discount at checkout. And I know Kyle was very, he giggled a little bit when he saw this, but we are sponsored by manscaped.com. And of course, the tagline is, your balls will thank you. So there we go. I had to say, use the code AATBirds, 20% discount and free shipping at checkout. All right, Maddie checking in. What's going on, Maddie? So here's what tonight kind of started as. I am sitting here over the weekend, and I am hearing about all of these things happening with Shikari Richardson. And at first I thought, man, this is funny, right? Because marijuana is not a performance-enhancing drug. And I thought back to the old Robin Williams skit, and he did this whole thing about how marijuana is not a performance-enhancing drug. And then I started getting into it a little bit more, and I went, wow, the International Olympic Committee is just going for it, aren't they? They are just completely going as racist as possible. So I decided, you know what, it is time. It is time to dig into things a little bit deeper into chips and dish here, because normally we keep it very surface level. We talk about the things happening in Philadelphia sports and we have a good time. But I'm going to be honest. There is a lot going on in the world and in the world of sports that we need to actually start talking about. So I have this platform here where people listen in and they comment, and I'm so appreciative of it. And tonight you might hear some things that you don't like, and that's okay. You might hear some things that you agree with, and that's okay. But we have to start having these conversations. And that's where tonight kind of came to be. And I went to Kyle and I said, listen, Kyle, any interest in talking about racism in sports? I don't even think I got to hit send before he was responding. I'm in. So Kyle and I are going to talk about things. Kyle is one of the people who I go to a lot when it comes to just talking about racism and how things are discussed and the word choices that are used. And we're going to do our best tonight to not jump into the politics of it all, because that's not what a sports podcast is about. But when you talk about racism and you talk about these there's going to be some political conversation. So again, my goal tonight is everybody keeps an open mind. And Jason, I agree that the story about racism in the NFL was absolutely glossed over. And actually, thinking about it, I didn't even put it on my talking point sheet, the concussion numbers, where it said that African Americans were predispositioned to not be as intelligent. So their concussion numbers were going to be lower when they talk about brain injuries. So we're going to get into a lot. But to kind of ease into it a little bit, Kyle, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and what you do a little bit?
Yeah, and I'm not going to talk about myself too much, but so I'm a teacher and I'm also a pastor. And as you know, Chip, I do a lot of work in the social justice sphere. I sit on a school board, which, depending on how you feel about certain things, is either good or bad. But basically, you know, for better or for worse, I've sort of embraced this call to do a lot of things that unfortunately put me in the public a lot, which can be, you sacrifice a lot, is what I'll say.
Sure.
You make yourself vulnerable, you put yourself out there, but it's fulfilling. If you feel like you're sort of called to help elevate this idea of justice for students, so they get, quality education and great outcomes, justice for the community, justice as it relates to criminal justice, and helping to eradicate some of the barriers in that field. So that's sort of who I am, the stuff that I work on.
Yeah. And that's, like I said, I felt very comfortable coming to you with this, having had a lot of the conversations that we've had.
Absolutely.
Just as two colleagues do, as two friends do. So I don't know if everyone's ready for it yet. So, we have to kind of ease into these conversations. So we're going to spend the first 10, 15 minutes talking about other things. That way, we can make everybody feel comfortable before we push the comfort level. So Major League Baseball announced their All-Stars. And Jason Voorhees, I know you're excited about this conversation. The Philadelphia Phillies actually do have two Major League Baseball All-Stars in Zach Wheeler and JT Realmuto. There's some conversation about whether or not there should be two. There's a conversation about whether or not there should be a third in Bryce Harper. Personally, I think that Wheeler is an absolute. I think JT Realmuto could have been a hit or miss. He's missed a lot of time with injury. He is still the best catcher in baseball, but when you've missed a lot of time for injury, it takes a lot away. And for Bryce Harper, he's not having a great season and the team is bad. So Bryce Harper not making it doesn't surprise me. His numbers are inflated. I know Jason just wrote an article about this for us on the All About the Birds website about, there's some things going on in the Phillies organization that we kind of need to fix. Yes, I did read the article, Jason. I did read the article. So Adam, right away, we already have our first division in the comments section, Kyle. Harper got snubbed. He should have got in. Jason is going to tell me that he should not have gotten in and that he is trade bait. Any thoughts on the Major League Baseball All-Star Game and the Phillies who made it?
No. No. You know what? Like I told you, I'll stick to my lane. So one of the things, and I'll be like real brief. So one of my top 5 memories in life is driving up from GW to the Phillies World Series parade. And, you know, at the height of the Phillies being phenomenal. And Philly, we always have this thing, like we can never just sort of get the grand slam of like all of our teams. You know, you see some of these cities where it's like every team gets the championship that year in their respective sport. But we've got like a defined amount of sports success. So unfortunately, after Jimmy Rollins left, I was like, I actually haven't been to a Phillies game in maybe 2 years. So hopefully, with COVID being over and
right,
you know, the change.
And it's tough, man. Baseball is a long season. It is a long season. And when the product in the Phillies isn't that great, it doesn't give you a lot of reason to go. I mean, we have one of the absolute highest payrolls in baseball.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, they're not playing like it. Like Didi Gregorius just hit a home run. Cool. Andrew Knapp hit a home run. Cool. So I'm watching the game. I always have a game on in the.
Who are we playing tonight? We're
playing the Cubs.
Okay.
At Wrigley. Which is I want to go at some point. In Wrigley, I want to go to Fenway. I want to go to all these places.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I do not personally think that JT Realmuto should have got in. I agree that yes, 19 home runs is super cool. I don't think it's worth a all-star berth. Jason's never going to go to a game again because Middleton either sells it or they fix it. So Jason's never going again. Maddie's saying Wrigley's amazing. So a lot of baseball fans up in here. And I agree. Look, the All-Star Game is always this big spectacle. And now it's in Colorado instead of being in Atlanta because shockingly, kind of like the whole theme of our stuff tonight, there was a political thing.
All tied in. Yep.
There was a political thing that happened. So Major League Baseball pulled the program, sent it to Colorado, now the city of Atlanta, and there's a group of people suing Major League Baseball for moving it because now it's going to affect the economy and it's going to affect this. And that's going to kind of be a theme of our show tonight is the almighty dollar and how it dictates everything, truly everything.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, congratulations to Zach Wheeler if you see this. Good job. JT, I need more from you in the second half. And Bryce Harper, you need to play angry. Play Tobias Harris style. And speaking of a little NBA Finals are officially set. It will not be the Philadelphia 76ers because they blew it. Kyle, any thoughts on the Sixers stinking it up?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to have – so, right, people always say you need – at least 2, probably 3 superstars to really contend for a championship. You need good defense. But you also need to make some shots, like do something.
Or take them.
You can't have an all-star, a rookie of the year on the court, not making any shots, not producing at all, just standing there, taking up space. It doesn't make any sense. And it's not fair because as a fan base, I mean, when Philly fans are with you, they're with you. And to look around Wells Fargo and just see the dejection on the faces of people who spent, I mean, I was seriously considering going, and thank God I didn't spend money, but looking at StubHub and looking at Game Time and seeing what people spent to watch Ben Simmons flop is very disappointing. So they're going to have to figure something out. And Doc Rivers coaching right now, I'm not sure I'm with it either. So, like, we really got to think about what it is that we want to do with the program. There's too many pieces to not have some sort of a successful product. If you lose a game, you lose a game. But don't lose not putting your best effort forward. I don't think that's fair to Philly fans.
Right, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying with, as Philadelphians, we always kind of have one weak wheel. The Sixers weren't supposed to be our weak wheel. We weren't supposed to be going into the offseason with the 76ers with all of these questions. Is Ben Simmons going to be back? Is Doc Rivers the right coach? Who is going to play alongside Joel Embiid in order for us to be We weren't supposed to have all these questions with the Sixers. Those are Eagles questions. Those are Phillies questions. Those are Flyers questions. Now we have 4 weak wheels. That's a problem.
They're playing in front of people who literally watched Allen Iverson sacrifice his body for championships. So for Ben Simmons to be standing there doing nothing is a major slap in the face.
Huge. You can't play 5-on-4 offense every single time.
Right.
So we have another debate in the comment section talking about the finals. You got the Suns versus the Bucks. Adam said, and he's pretty good with his prognostications. Adam says Bucks in 6. Manny, my twin, right, says Suns in 4. Kyle, who hoists?
So I actually can very much see this being a 7-game series. I personally, he's supposed to be back, right? The Greek Freak's supposed to come back, right?
Yeah. Oh, he's not missing the finals.
Right. So he was out for what? A 1 game or something?
I believe he missed 2. He missed 2.
So I personally would like to see him get a ring. So I'm rooting for the Bucks. So if I'm going with something, I'm going with Bucks in 7.
Yeah, so I respectfully disagree. I respectfully disagree. I think this Suns team is dominant.
I don't like that they came out of nowhere.
But here's the thing: they were the number 1 seed. They didn't come out of nowhere. They've been doing this all season.
Like trajectory of you know what I mean? Like sports.
Right. They weren't supposed to be the number 1 team coming out of the West, but they are for one reason: Chris Paul. And I've done enough shows right around the talk of the MVP conversation where I had people saying Chris Paul should be the MVP of the league. And I went, no, he already played on the team with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Like, they already had their pieces. No, the Suns are in the finals because Chris Paul is the point guard of this team. I think that the best player on the Bucks isn't the Greek Freak. The best player on the Bucks is Chris Middleton. Giannis is a lot like Ben Simmons, but he actually scores. See, there's where they would beat the Sixers. However, I don't see them beating the Suns. I think their 3-point game is too much. I see them beating the Suns, beating the Bucks in 5.
Really?
I do.
Wow.
And I was debating going, like Manny said, in 4 because they're a little bit better rested. They don't have any of the injuries to their bigger pieces. You have to look at like Giannis maybe missing a game.
No, he'll probably miss a game.
So therefore, I do see the Suns winning it because Chris Paul is not going to retire from the NBA without a championship, and this is his best chance to get one.
Anybody else in the comments going with Bucks other than me?
So Adam went with the Bucks in 6, but Manny and Jason went Suns. I went Suns. So we'll see. It's definitely not the finals that everybody wanted.
Not at all.
I don't think anybody in the United States outside of Arizona and Milwaukee wanted it. These are not very big marketable teams.
Right.
So that's where you're going to see a problem. They're going to talk about ratings. Look, the 2 best teams made it.
Yeah.
The 2 best teams made it. So either watch it or don't, but the 2 best teams made it. All right. I think that was enough of a palate cleanser. It has been 18 minutes of non-really serious talk. Again, the point of tonight's conversation is to discuss the Olympics coming up and how the International Olympic Committee is just flat out going to be as racist as possible and getting away with it. And that's going to transition our conversation into racism in sports in general. So, for those of you that may have missed it, there is a United States female track star. Her name is Shikari Richardson. She was given originally a 3-month suspension for testing positive for cannabis, weed, for those of you playing the home game, which she smoked after her mother's death as a coping strategy. Now, she basically took a deal that reduced it to a 1-month suspension, which, if she really wanted to, she could still compete in like July 27th, which is smack dab in the middle of the Olympics if they put her on the team. She ain't being put on the team. Let's call it like it is. She's not going to be put on the team to race in one event. So, just taking the story at its face value, and really all of the stuff going on with the Olympics, Kyle, what are your initial thoughts? How does things like this maintain the Olympic spirit?
So I know that we're going to talk about multiple things in the Olympic conversation. This is one where I'm not quick to jump on the injustice train.
Okay.
Because the rules are known. So it's not like there was a new rule implemented. For the most part, it's not like an inconsistent implementation, with the exception of her taking a deal, which you could consider inconsistent implementation of the rule. So basically, this is an unfortunate situation where Shikari's circle really should have protected her and assisted, make sure, I know times are tough, so on and so forth, but keep in mind that you've got this thing to look forward to that your mother would want you to be successful in, so on and so forth. So it's unfortunate, but the rules on that are the rules, and you can't smoke weed, and it is what it is.
Right. And that means that, look, you can go into the bigger conversation about, the idea of criminalizing marijuana and decriminalizing marijuana. That's a very different conversation. It's confusing to me looking at it as a lot of people treat this as like marijuana is treated as medicinal purposes. You can go into a store in Pennsylvania with your card now and buy marijuana, but you're saying that you can't actually use it if you're an Olympic athlete. So
you can go into a dispensary in Colorado and buy gummies.
Right. So there's got to be some level of consistency across the board. And I think that's what the IOC is attempting to do.
Yeah.
Where I get very frustrated is if you go all the way back to 2009 and Michael Phelps, there is a photo with him and a bong. And he lost some sponsors, but he was still allowed to compete. Why? Because he was the biggest athlete in the world. Biggest Olympic athlete in the world. So there is a double standard when it comes to male and female. Let's start there, because we already know there's the conversation of the NBA versus the WNBA and also racism. Michael Phelps is white. Shikari Richardson is black. So I think one of the other things, so we said main ideas for the conversation tonight. One of the things we're going to talk about is the almighty dollar, right? So Michael Phelps, and we're going to use this phrase sparingly tonight because when people hear it, they tend to go, "Oh, I don't have that. I do. I do have it." And I know that because I've been trained a lot in, look, this is what it looks like. This is what it is. It's not saying anything bad about you. What it's saying is you have it. Other people don't. Jason, I have it. My concern is when the double standard is blowing it out of proportion, right? So again, my concern is that everybody has social media now, right? Everybody has social media, which means it's given everybody the illusion of people want to hear what you have to say. And I came across this tweet, and I'm gonna pull it up on our screen here because I bookmarked it. My wife shared it with me. It was just hideous, but I think it needs to be shared. So share. Here we go. So there is a troll on Twitter, and she's got her little blue check, so she's verified. Neat for her. But basically, the long nails. Right? The long nails that Shikari Richardson has added on. So again, a cultural thing that the long nails are coming back for everybody. But the tweet is, quote, from Claire Lehman, or Lemon, not sure how you say it, I'm not really interested. Not sure whether the nails are real or fake. My friends, the nails are fake. Very clearly fake. But in case you don't know, very strong nails and hair can be a side effect of steroid use. She then goes on to throw FloJo, quote, obvious drug user under the bus as well, who died in her sleep at 38 because of a lifetime of drug uses. No, she had seizures. She had an epileptic seizure attack. My problem is this, and Kyle, I'm gonna throw it to you. My first question is this: how do we, as a society that is so reliant on social media and the media, start to remove these people that are just awful human beings from our input, from the people talking to our brains?
There's not a silver bullet, and I would be lying if I said I have all the answers. What I do think, though, having used it now for over a decade, well over a decade, I would say, probably you and me, right? We're probably 15, 16 years into social media.
2005, I think my Facebook started.
I think mine's 2006. So social media is really revealing itself to sort of be like alcohol, right? It doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. And the crazy thing is now, a lot of what used to be covert. So there was this sort of idea that like people have keyboard courage and they'll say and do things on social media would never do in person. But as you know, knowing a little bit about some of the stuff I've been involved in recently, now post certain individuals and certain national things, right? People are emboldened to say and do what used to be keyboard courage things in person. So to your question, how do we sort of put a check on that and elevate like facts and like check our sources and filter out bad information? One is helping to like make good people and establishing like, what our common like values need to be. But two is really helping people to be critical thinkers, right? Being critical is not a bad thing. Being critical is a great thing, because if you ask the right questions, you're going to get to truth and reality. Getting to truth and reality should never be a bad thing. Like looking at a system like the Olympics and assessing it and saying, okay, who's benefiting from this arrangement, this conflict theory, sociology? Who's benefiting from this? Like, what would cause people to put this rule into place? Where is the money flowing when particular things happen? And why was it implemented this way, not that way? Asking critical questions like that can never be a bad thing, because it's going to get us to the truth.
No, and I think that's really good. My wife, by the way, she was waiting for the FloJo comment. She sent me the tweet. She was ready for this. She's like, listen, FloJo was tested more rigorously than anyone because she was constantly accused by people that couldn't believe she was so naturally talented, negative every single time. So that's where you also look at the male versus female conversation.
Absolutely.
Males refuse to believe that women can be athletes too. Refuse to believe that women can do things that men can. Well, this is a man's thing. Stop it. Stop with your toxic masculinity. Believe it or not, someone like Becky Hammond, who is an assistant coach in the NBA for the Spurs, Paul Gasol, who is one of the best players of our generation, said flat out, it's not that she can coach a little bit. I was coached by Phil Jackson, by Greg Popovich, two of the greatest coaches of all time. She can coach. It's not she can coach for a woman. She can coach.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing that you said that's really important, it's we live in a world where information is so readily available to us.
Absolutely.
Right? It is so readily available to us. But with that power comes responsibility. It's going to sources that present things in a non-biased way. It's getting the full story. It is not, well, I want to hear my opinion said by somebody with a blue check mark next to their name because therefore my opinion's right. Just because there's a blue check mark doesn't mean anything. Like, one more time. So again, talking about the racism piece of it all, talking about bringing race into things, talking about whether or not something is race related. So this is from the women's national soccer team, right? And I'll go full screen on this so you guys can see it a little better. It's from the women's national soccer team. And basically, on July 4th, they had a 98-year-old World War II veteran playing the national anthem on his harmonica. Well, the women's national soccer team has been boycotting the national anthem pretty consistently. So they quote, "It's shameful that several members turned their back on this 98-year-old." They didn't turn their back on the veteran. They did what they had been doing. They are boycotting the national anthem in a polite and respectful way, as soccer allows them to do. But at Cat Turd 2 calls them disgusting, vile losers. I hope they lose every time they play. And it's got 11,000 likes. So this is now the conversation. As Jason says, screw blue check marks. I don't understand. How do we get back to basic decency? Because they've talked about, well, let's censor social media. Oh, you can't do that. Free speech. Okay, just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. How do we get back to the number one thing we were all taught as children? If you can't say something nice, don't say anything. How do we get back? Is there a way to get back to that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Cool. Show over. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, right. You're always going to have people who are saying things that are edifying and people who are negative Nancy's or negative Neds or whatever you want to call them. It goes back to the reality, like you said, that now everybody's got a platform. So the best thing to do, I think, is to elevate the voices of the people who are saying edifying things. And honestly, I love free speech because there has always been individuals who, for better or for worse, utilize their platform to challenge the system, always. And, in 2021, we've got these myths of certain people now, myths of Martin Luther King. Like, all he ever did was stand on granite steps and talk about his dream. No.
Sure. Yep. That's all he did, right?
By the end of his life in 1968, April 4th, 1968, when he was shot in Memphis at the Lorraine Motel, the man was very much disliked, and not just by white individuals. He was disliked by a large portion of the very established African-American social system. So, we come up with these myths, but why is that? Because his voice, his platform, his writing, his speeches were challenging the system and would have been considered by many to be offensive in that time. A lot of the stuff that I say would be considered to be offensive until, a lot of stuff you would say, Chip, in a platform like this would be considered to be offensive until 10 years from now when people are like, gee, so glad they were speaking up on that issue then, because now we realize that it's right.
But I think that's my point. Like, look, I have always been told as a teacher, as a member of a band, as a member of a podcast, like, don't say anything controversial. Don't stir the pot. Well, at some point, I think it needs a little stirring, right? We have to have these tough conversations and be willing to hear. Look, I'm going to be very honest. At 34 years old, I have never in one day of that life known what it is like to be a black man. Never once. And I can say that because I've never. So me sitting here growing up, when I was growing up, it was, we don't see color. We don't see color. Don't talk. Oh, well, they're not black. By saying that, look, now we're in 2021. When you say that, you are taking away a piece of someone's culture. That's not okay.
True. And it's not true. It's legitimately not true. It's just not true.
It's not true.
It's not true. And like statistics and outcomes bear that out. But here, Mr. Social Studies teacher,
I'm ready.
The inconsistency of the conversation. It's like, stop doing things that divide us. Okay, how was our country founded?
Yes, sir. Do it.
Like, let's not say anything that divides us from the British because we don't want to offend them. I mean, it just some things are laughable because they don't consider the context. And one of those things is that there's never been any meaningful progress in society without someone to prophetically speak out and challenge whatever is not okay. And there are things that are not okay, and we want to keep making progress. Nobody should be discriminated against based on anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, make progress on race, make progress for folk who are gay, lesbian, transgender, etc. Like, make progress. And unfortunately, that means offending people who don't want to make progress.
Right. The status quo is not always the way to go. Right? It's not. I know. I wanted to put one kind of rhyme in there, see if I can get some kind of soundbite out of it. But it's true. It's not the way to go. So I dug a little deeper because, again, remember, when I started this weekend, I heard about the Shikari Richardson thing, and I kind of thought it was like, oh, well, weed's not a performance-enhancing drug. Anyone who's ever been on weed. And like I said, I jumped back to the Robin Williams skit when he was live on Broadway and did a whole thing about how they took the medals away from the snowboarders because he couldn't find it because it was around his neck. It was a joke. It was ha, 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 ha. Marijuana is not a performance-enhancing drug. If you've ever been on weed, you know it's not a performance-enhancing drug. You're lucky if you can find your feet. And if this was the only thing that the International Olympic Committee was doing, this would be a different conversation. However, it's not. Here are some other things that the International Olympic Committee has put in place for this Olympic, or upheld for this Olympic, because, hey, it's the status quo. Now, mind you, we can have a conversation that it's 2021. Should we even be having the 2020 Olympics in an area that is just still dealing with some serious COVID-related things? That's a whole other conversation, but they're having it, and away we go. The Olympics put something in place called Rule 50 all the way back in 1975. They put this Rule 50 in place, which basically says no political statements at the Olympics. This is in response to 1968, the very famous photo of John Carlos and Tommy Smith in the height of the Black Power movement, after winning the race, having their gloved hands in the air. No more political statements. Oh, well, we upheld it because we asked 70% of athletes and they don't want politics at the Olympics, which very well may be true. And I don't necessarily have a problem with this, but for the fact that everything else, like, you can't have Black Lives Matter clothing at the Tokyo Games. Why not? You could be sponsored by everything. You're telling me you can be sponsored by Viagra, but you can't say that Black Lives Matter? That's a problem. That is a problem. There are three. No, go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead. Go.
Well, no, I was just going to say, but back to our conversation a couple of minutes ago about asking questions and approaching things critically, being a critical observer of any system, any structure. The Olympics is still a product of a Western structure. And we know that racism is not exclusive to the United States. Systemically, it's not exclusive to America. So no, there aren't people at the International Olympic Committee holding up signs saying we hate a particular race, but systemically there are structures in place that obviously can be negative towards certain groups of people. It boggles my mind why an international organization that wants to promote the betterment of all people wouldn't support movements that aim to lift certain populations. But it doesn't boggle my mind because there's always like an economic factor to the way things work.
Right. And that's exactly it. There is an economic factor to it all, and that's infuriating. Look, we know it exists. We know that every war that's ever been fought has been fought over the dollar bill. When you really boil it down, it has
Or
been
an
fought over the
equivalent.
dollar bill. What's that?
Or an equivalent or whatever.
Or equivalent to it, or a way to make the dollar bill. Exactly. The Black Lives Matter movement, well, it divides some people, so we can stop. Look, I understand that the Olympics are about unifying people, but right now people are unified around the fact that there is an entire race of people, entire section of the human race.
The American economy is unified around that. This is still a global economic thing. So, I mean, and there are some parts of the Western world that are as, if not more racist than the United States. I have an aunt who is a PhD in pharmaceutical something.
Okay.
She has the PhDs in. She travels everywhere, and I regularly get updates on like what racist thing happened in this part of the world. And when you begin to look at those things, it makes perfect sense why the IOC would not be too upset that a majority of its athletes that were polled at least would vote not to allow political statements, because that's how they feel.
But this is the same International Olympic Committee that allowed Adolf Hitler to make an appearance in the 1930s.
Yeah.
At the Olympics.
Was that the year they hosted?
Yeah, it was the year they hosted.
Right. Munich, is it?
Yes. So you have pictures, because let me tell you, I did a lot of research for tonight to make sure I had it. But you saw pictures of Nazis on the medal stand holding out their symbols.
Yeah,
but Black Lives,
absolutely,
Black Power wasn't okay.
Yeah,
Manny, I tried to separate the politics, but if a person can carry a Confederate war flag and society be okay with it, but taking a knee is unpatriotic. We're going to get into the whole knee thing in a second. And I know Adam had a question about it too. But still, for this Olympics, there's more than just you can't be politicized. You can't wear the Black Lives Matter. You can't smoke weed. If you're Christina Mboma, Bellatrix Messelingi, and Caster Semenya, they were all banned. Now, I say this, 3 African-American or African women, 3 black women were all banned due to naturally high testosterone levels, which is known as hyperandrogenism. So now you're telling these people how much of a woman they can be. Are you kidding? Because they can control their testosterone. Not that they're testing positive for steroids. Not that they're testing positive for any kind of testosterone. No, their testosterone levels that are naturally high, the way they were born, prevent them. And by the way, all 3 of them were front runners, literally, in their events. This is the Olympic spirit.
Yeah.
Finally, my very favorite. And Kyle, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
This is the one that really gets me.
Here, all of them are bad, but this one is horrific. There is a swim cap known as the Soul Cap, which is designed to be a little bit bigger for, quote, afro hair. And it was banned. It's a swimming cap. It was banned because it, quote, doesn't fit the natural form of the head, which my females who are watching, no swim cap naturally fits your head. Let's start with that. And, quote, the best knowledge that athletes competing in international events have never used, neither require caps of such size and configuration. Therefore, the Soul Cap is not necessary. Kyle, do you have some thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's absurd.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Basically, what the IOC has said in a slew of decisions is that you need to be a particular type of physical female. You need to have a particular type of head. And like you said, Chip, it sort of goes against what should be the spirit of the Olympics, this international organization that, in rare form sort of draws people from all over the world, but now seems to be saying that only some of those people should be valued in their identity, their natural identity. So it's very unfortunate. I think stuff like that is much more divisive than somebody supporting a particular idea in their own country.
Right. Look, the point of the Olympics, like you said, is to bring people from all walks of life together to compete. That's the point of the Olympics. And like you just said, these rulings are saying, yes, that's absolutely the plan. As long as you look a certain way, compete a certain way, act a certain way, woman a certain way, race a certain way.
Oh, yeah. If your pituitary gland is slightly too active, no go.
Like, and with Olympics, you know, a hundredth of a second could make a difference. So what do? They re-engineer the caps. They re-engineer the suits. They do whatever they can for that little bit of edge. And now you're saying that if you are a black woman who is proud of her hair, and that's a cultural thing. Look, hair is a very important thing to a lot of people. Race, whatever. But I know, again, teaching where I teach, having the conversations that I have, that African hair, African American hair, is a very important part of their culture, of the culture. So now you're saying if it doesn't fit in a swim cap, you better do something with your hair if you want to race on an international level, because, quote, athletes competing at international events have never required it. Are you kidding me?
But stuff like this doesn't surprise a lot of us.
I know.
It's frustrating, but it's not surprising.
But when do we get to the point where it is surprising again? When do we get to the point where we go, that's not okay? That's wrong. Toby Gray coming in. What's going on? I knew Mama Gray would pop in. Yeah, it's when you're saying, like, the people who are now making this thing about why can't I wear my swim cap are being told you're too much. You're not able, you can't race without the special swim cap. Like, stop it. One of my very most infuriating examples of this happened, I think, about 3 years ago. It was in New Jersey. It was a high school wrestling match. Kid's name was Andrew Johnson. And he was told, again, it was a written rule. So going back to that whole smoking weed thing, and it's a written established rule. But the question is, the follow-up is, well, should it be? Why is it? Was told by a referee, and again, Andrew Johnson, black kid, had dreads, was told he can either forfeit the match or cut the dreads right there on the mat.
Wait, I remember you're talking about a publicized one, right? Not a personal.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that very well.
And what did he do? He got his dreads cut.
Yeah, that was traumatic. It was traumatic watching it.
Traumatic.
Hearing the interviews after the fact, the fact that somebody's personal space can be invaded like that. You don't have the right to tell some kid what to do with his hair. It's ridiculous.
So he cut it. Matt side. He wrestled. He won the match. He went a little bit further, but it was like a state tournament. Didn't win the whole thing. They sued. Do you know what happened to the referee who did that?
I thought he got in trouble. Am I not correct?
He did. He got in a little bit of trouble. He was not allowed to referee for 2 years.
Oh.
Let me say that again. The referee who said to another human being, this is what I need you to look like, was then told, oh, it's fine. You can go back. Yeah, exactly, Toby. He got his job back. He is now I can't even imagine as a teacher, as an umpire, as a human being doing those things. I don't understand how these kind of things, between the soul cap, between the Black Lives Matter t-shirts, between cutting, how do we make it? How do there get to be less examples of this? I don't want to have examples like this at the top of my head. How do we fix this?
I mean, it really starts with an internal locus of control. We can only control ourselves, for one.
True.
So us being good people goes a long way. A lot of people undercut the value of that, but just being the example. You and I, Chip, are really blessed because we get the opportunity to interact with students who are going to contribute to, who are and who will continue to contribute to society in increasingly greater ways. But it starts with us helping them to just be kind to one another, modeling it. You as a parent doing that for your children. And after that, man, normalizing being good and calling out when people aren't. Like that's what people don't understand. You have to call out what is not okay. It's not okay for a referee to ask a kid. I mean, the most vulnerable time of life is a teenager to cut your hair. Your hair is part of your identity. So not only have you told another human being, but you've done that to a kid for all intents and purposes. That's traumatic. And then, people will ask, well, why do people feel a certain way about certain institutions? Because traumatic stuff like that happens. And it happens more to certain types of individuals than others.
Right. And I think what Maddie says here is another one of our major points. We have to be willing to have these conversations. And right now, even with all of the social media and all of the information and all of the ability to have these conversations, right now, people are set in their ignorance. Well, I learned it this way, therefore, that's how it is. No, there's been another 20 years worth of research. The way you learned it was incorrect.
Well,
the way you learned it is wrong.
One of the best exercises in any conversation of this type is to take somebody else's perspective. Literally sort of like ask a hypothetical question. So, what if I had a white child? How would I feel about X, Y, or Z? If I were a white individual, I would ask, what if I had a black child? Would I still discount, what this group is marching about or what this group is protesting about or taking a knee about? Would I still feel the same way about, interactions with law enforcement that I do now? And a lot of times when people really stop, don't just ask themselves, but really stop and consider that perspective and that question, the answer is a little bit different. Or, how would I feel if, or how do I feel? How do I feel about the potential of my child dating somebody outside of their race? Or when people start to ask themselves the hard questions, it either A, opens them up to somebody else's perspective, or B, exposes certain biases within themselves that they've never really faced. And I don't think enough of us, I include myself, I don't think enough of us do that. I've tried to do it, particularly as it relates to conversations with law enforcement. Like I have a growing number of police officer friends that I sit and have difficult conversations with and help myself understand their perspective on things. We can watch the same video and I could be like, my God, how could they, engage that individual with a weapon? And the police officer gives you a different perspective. Doesn't mean that I don't believe what I believe, but at least now I understand why they believe what they believe. And I can appreciate it more because I understand it.
And that's what's so important. So my wife, I know she's listening from the other room, but she's also she loves, I can't say this enough, Kyle. She loves you. This is not a new, she loves you. She loves this conversation.
Your wife loves me, man.
She does. Listen. I know my truth. I speak my truth.
For the record, I love your wife too. I love everything I see. All the the motivation, all the good stuff.
Oh my God, she's made me 30 pounds lighter. But what she says here is really important. And her and I have this conversation as parents, right? Raising two boys in 2021 in a world that is scary to raise children in. People need, I'm going to read this out loud because people are going to listen back on the actual podcast version of this. Yeah. And they might not see this. people, this is for my wife, people need to learn to normalize it being okay, their minds, once they're presented with new information. That's all I can hope for as a human, a parent, a woman. Being a good human and raising good humans is what it's about for now and the future. Yep. So being willing to hear something and go, wow, I didn't learn it that way, and begin to shift it. So for me, when our school started a lot of these racial conversations, and I, for the first time, heard the phrase white privilege, I was of the group that went, I don't have that. That's not me. I don't even see color. I have black friends. And then we dug into it deeper, and I went, it's not an attack on me. It's not saying I'm a bad person. It's saying that just looking the way that I do, I get certain things that Kyle, looking the way that you do, don't get. Or it gets the same piece of information is treated differently because of the way that we look.
Yeah.
It's accepting that and now going, okay, so now that I have this information, what do I do with it?
One of the better examples that I use when I'm having some of these conversations is being right-handed versus left-handed.
I'm a lefty.
Most people are right-handed. It's the dominant trait. But if you're left-handed, you've literally got to stop and think about where you sit at a dinner table, where you sit in a classroom, what kind of scissors you pick up. So the fact that you're a lefty?
I'm a lefty.
So the fact that I'm right-handed means that I have a particular type of privilege. Does that mean that I'm evil? No. Does that mean that I should hate myself or undervalue, the way God made me? Absolutely not. It means that I should be aware of and acknowledge the fact that there's a privilege that I have, a benefit that I have that you, as my brother, do not have. And if you start to apply that to other things, both of us are males. We identify as males. We were born males. Yes. We identify as males. We have a certain privilege in society. I have male privilege. You have male privilege. Do I want God to make me a woman? I don't know.
And some of the things that my wife has said, I can't even believe, like, she's told me some of the things that her mom taught her growing up. Like, when you are walking to your car at night, you keep your car keys between your fingers. I had no clue of that.
Ask the number of women in your life how many of them carry mace or have like a little, pepper spray thing on their keychain. A lot of them, right? I mean, there are just certain things that we don't think about because we're males and we have that privilege. So if you extend that out to race, which is a social construct, which is something that society has created, if you extend that out, there is such a thing as a privilege for certain individuals of certain race.
Right. And for me, like, tying it back to the sports stuff now, because, this is a sports podcast, and that's what we were trying. I know we got into it. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, this is a sports podcast. So one of my examples that I want to bring up that infuriates me, and I saw it happen a lot last NBA season, when a white coach is fired in the NBA, Sports Center usually says so-and-so was laid off or relieved of their duties. When a black coach was fired, it said this coach was fired. Same thing. Why is it different wording?
I would assume same reasons that there's undertones of racism in other areas. One thing with the media is market incentive.
Sure.
One of my professors at GW, John Sides, pretty well-known guy when it relates to communications and particularly like political communications and stuff. I'll never forget in class, he was like, one thing you got to know about the media is there's market incentive, right? The media is designed to make money. If you're watching a television show or Sports Center or whatever it is, the whole element of everything has been designed to make somebody money. So who is the market? Who are they trying to market to? It's the privilege plays out in the media.
Right.
Because of the market.
Right. But like I dig into the numbers then, because you're the math teacher up in here, by choice, right? The NBA is 75% black. The NFL is 70% black. Players. So why is the phrase shut up and dribble or stick to sports applied to these people?
Yeah.
Aren't NBA players, aren't NFL players, by speaking up, advocating for who they are?
Because we didn't pay, obviously I'm not saying this, but this is the thought, the think aloud.
Sure.
We didn't pay to hear you give your opinion. We paid to see you use your bodies to entertain us. And it goes back to like the history of people of color in this country. There's a difference between someone's all right, let me be real.
But
There's a difference between somebody doing work and somebody expressing how they feel. That's the best way to put that without getting in trouble.
I got it. I mean, I get what you're saying, but like I go even further back in history. So what you're saying is the whole idea of the whole shut up and dribble or stick to sports. It's because we paid money for these athletes to do these things. You're going all the way back to the gladiator games. And who made up these gladiators? Slaves, prisoners of war. And eventually, if they survived X amount of battles, they were freed. Is that where we still are as a society almost 500 years later? Longer than that, right? Is that where we still are, the gladiator mentality?
I mean, I get it. It's uncomfortable. People pay to either watch, or maybe you're not paying. Maybe you're sitting in front of your TV watching sports, right? You want to be released from the stresses of your job. Sports are your outlet.
Sure.
Root for your team. But you can't blame folks who feel like their dignity has been denied in every area of their life for using the biggest platform they have to advocate for change. It sucks for the person who's watching and doesn't want any of that. But the alternative is for players to have to continue to give of themselves and then off the court be treated like crap, right? You can be, I've met some of them, you can be a multimillionaire basketball player and still be seen as a person of color. When they get in their car and drive wherever they're going, they're still a person of color behind the wheel. However many degrees I have and no criminal record and the thousands of students that I've taught over my career and the church that I pastor, I like to think I'm a relatively good guy, but I'm still a black man when I'm behind the wheel of a car driving wherever I'm going. And that is a perspective that I think some people don't take.
No, and again, for me, I would never understand that because I just get in my car and I go where I got to go. Like me being in a cover band for as long as I was, I drove back at all hours of the night.
Never got stopped.
I got pulled over all the time because they're looking for drunk drivers. And me, I didn't really drink at shows or didn't drink at shows ever. So I'd be like, hi, how you doing? They're like, oh, what's going on? I have my, obligatory, yes, I'm coming back from the show. Oh, you're in a band, like the conversation. But I go, in my mind, if I was black, I can't imagine this conversation going this way. A lot of the times. Yeah. Some of the times it would have.
Yeah. But not every time a black person gets stopped does something bad happen. Admittedly, most of the time something bad does not happen. But the statistics are there. There's disproportionate stops for certain individuals. And when you tie that into sports, that's why people like LeBron James, don't show up for games or whatever, because they get frustrated. It's frustrating. It's the constant trauma of having to watch people of color replayed over the media, which is its own issue, right? The media would never constantly blast the names of or the images of certain other individuals being shot or gunned down or what have you. Even even after like January 6th, because we had a whole bunch of conversations about this.
Whole bunch of conversations.
Like the faces and names of individuals. Yes, they've been put out there a little bit, but had they been individuals who look like me, I would think we would see a lot more of like this criminal and this person. And why? Because it's much more acceptable to criminalize people of color than it is white individuals. It's just the reality. It's the reality. It is. You know, whole studies have been done about it.
Right. And I think, like you mentioned, LeBron James. So it's the idea of, shut up and dribble, or put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. LeBron James is a huge advocate, and he donates millions of dollars each year to various charities, opens up his own schools, boys and girls. He backs it up. He's not just sitting there with his mountains of money counting. He's doing so regardless of whether or not you like him as a player, and MJ will always be better than LeBron to me.
Always.
Let's go. Let's go.
Always.
It's not even close.
Always.
It's not even close. Forever. But as a human, as an advocate, LeBron James is miles ahead of Michael Jordan, because Michael Jordan played in a time where he was told to just shut up and dribble. Michael Jordan didn't stir the pot at all.
The one time he said something, got in big trouble.
Huge trouble. So he didn't. And then he put out a Space Jam movie, and, he was back to his nice image. And so when you talk about advocacy, LeBron James is mountains ahead of Michael Jordan.
Correct. And LeBron produces on the court. So, right? Shut up and dribble. Well, he's dribbling. So now let him talk.
Right. Right. And players, you can go across any sport. You can go across any sport. So when Venus Williams came into the league, oh my God, what is she doing? Grunting and doing. She's winning tournaments. But the first chance that Serena Williams fail, so-and-so. Tiger Woods. How many times did we see his mugshot? How many times did we see his mugshot? You're telling me no other golfer that has ever played the game, again, because golf was a predominant, and still is, a predominantly white sport. But Tiger Woods, you either see him winning or his crime photo. You don't see a lot of the other stuff. It's very frustrating. And you go all the way back. Look, we're not that far. The Negro baseball leagues only ended in the 1960s. We're not that far removed from a lot of this stuff where, Ray Rice does this awful thing and he's thrown out of the NFL, but Kristaps Porzingis rapes and abuses people in New York, but he's doing great over in Dallas. It doesn't match up. It doesn't match up, and it's infuriating. And I want to start fixing things.
The Rooney Rule.
Oh my God, the Rooney Rule.
So another one of my professors. I guarantee you, I'm not making this stuff up, but
didn't even make my list. I forgot about the Rooney Rule. Go ahead, speak it.
The Rooney Rule was in part. Johnny Cochran was really the guy behind the Rooney Rule. A lot of people don't know that.
Okay.
Johnny Cochran went to this lawyer who I happened to take a class with later and was like, hey, we've examined this and we think that there can be some statistical proving to the fact that there's entrenched racial issues with how the NFL is hiring coaches. So, as you know, like the Rooney Rule came about and it's helped in various ways, but people look at these things and like, it's affirmative action, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, there's systemic, what's the word I'm looking for? There's like systemic inequity in the system. So you have to actively work to fix that. It's not going to fix itself. You cannot be a country founded upon a particular group of people being 3/5 of the humanity of others and think that it's going to fix it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 years. It does not fix itself. You have to actively work to dismantle unfair systems. You have to actively work to do that. And some people can't get past that. Some people think because there was like a law passed and now everybody can play in the same league, that doesn't mean that the inherent issues in society don't reproduce themselves in every system, whether it's education, major sports leagues. The fact that the athletes are a particular color does not mean that there's not racism in those leagues. And some people
you're right. It's not. Look, racial
the employees
issues
on the plantations were a particular color. That doesn't mean like, you wouldn't say great. Well, and I shouldn't even say employees. Let me take that back because somebody's going to look at it and be like they were not employees, and they weren't.
They weren't.
Labor on plantations were a particular color. There was more, in many respects, more of them than their white slave owners. Doesn't mean that like things were great because there was more of them there. You know what I mean? Some people say these crazy things that make no sense.
No, but I think that's really important. And you look at some of these rules and some of these decisions that have been passed in sports for the last couple hundred years, right? So racism is not something that you can sweep under the rug and just go, oh, it's going to be fine. We've discovered that that's not it. Not talking about it hasn't fixed anything. Right. There are still issues. So having these conversations, look, did I think in my life I would ever be leading a conversation about race on a sports podcast? I never thought I'd have a sports podcast, let alone having a conversation about race on one, because you just don't talk about it. Remember, you don't see color. No, first off, like you said, we do see color.
Yeah, every one of us.
We do. So it's how we deal with it. So again, going back through some history here, right? 1967, the NCAA said, no more dunking. They passed a rule that said no more dunking the basketball. Well, they then went to the data, like you mentioned, and it turns out that's the way that that rule really only applied to African Americans, mostly, especially in the 1960s. So they quickly pulled that away when they realized, hey, this is a racist rule. Talking about all this flag stuff, the idea of kneeling for the national anthem, this is not new. It has been done since like the 1970s. If people you're talking about Vietnam, you're talking about a lot of these things where people had an issue with something that the United States was doing and they peacefully protested. Social media has blown our version of it out of proportion. And here's what I mean. I did not know until about 2 hours ago that Muhammad Abdul-Rauf, who played for the Grizzlies, I believe, if I remember correctly, in 1996, he's an NBA basketball player, refused to stand for the national anthem. Because again, he was Muslim, he didn't want to stand for the national anthem, he had a big problem with it. So David Stern, the commissioner at the time, suspended him for not. So then he made a deal where he was allowed. Let me say this again. He was told how he was allowed to protest. He could close his eyes and look downward during the national anthem. I didn't learn that till 2 hours ago. When Colin Kaepernick did it in 2016, it set the world ablaze and it cost him an NFL career.
Oh, it offended people because God forbid we offend people. But somebody has to offend someone. And, kudos to Colin. There's actually a very, very large canvas painted by a Philly guy, Chuck Stiles. It's not an original. It's a print of the canvas. I have a canvas of Kaepernick kneeling in my office.
Right. I love that. Now, talking strictly sports in 2021, do I think Colin Kaepernick should be in the NFL? I do not. As a starting NFL quarterback, I think that he is too far removed. Now, if he is to be in the NFL, he wanted to change positions. He wanted to work his way back. He wanted to be a backup quarterback. I'm fine with that. I think that's reasonable. I think knowing your limitations is important. You look at Tim Tebow. He knows he's not an NFL quarterback. He wants to play in the NFL, so he switched positions, and now he's trying tight end.
Yeah.
I think that the people, and it's going to happen again this year, who are still calling for Colin Kaepernick to be a starting guy. Hasn't played an NFL game in 5 years.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's a fair position. I personally don't think he's going to be back. So whether or not
I don't either.
You believe he should, I don't think he's going to be back. I think that ship has sort of sailed personally, but he's sort of accomplished, what he set out to accomplish. It sucks that he had to lose his positions, but we are moved so much farther as a society, at least you hope we are.
You hope.
Than when he started kneeling.
Right. But again, you're going to have a contingent of people who in 2021 are going to go, we'll just bring in Colin Kaepernick. He's better than this guy. 5 years removed from football. No, he's not.
Has it been 5?
2017 was the last time he was released in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been almost 5 years. So as far as a football player, but he's still, like, if you look at, again, here's you go, your money, here's you go, your different outlets. He's still listed as an option in last year's NFL Madden game. You're causing controversy as far as football, whether or not he can play the NFL game.
But he can still make his money, and he can still make his money virtually or electronically.
Right. I don't know. It's just, look, as far as the kneeling stuff goes, I don't do it. I don't. But again, it's not my issue, right?
I don't either.
Okay.
But let me challenge that, Chip. It is your issue. It's all of our issue. But it is, and that's the thing. Like, the other thing is, I think a lot of Black people, and I'll speak for myself, sometimes get tired of having to bear the burden of fighting racism. And that's when we'll really start to see progress. So, Chip, as you know, I recently took my time at a school board meeting to express myself.
Yes, you did.
And I'm glad that one of our colleagues, Dr. Hutinsky, spoke up after myself and the other African-American board member. In general, in these conversations, it's going to take a lot more white individuals in every area speaking up on these sports talk shows, these like witty guys that always have something smart to say. It's going to take some of them and not just Charles Barkley and Charles Ernie who?
Ernie Davis?
Shaq and who's the Kenny
Davis. No, yeah. Kenny.
Not Kenny Davis. Kenny John. Not whatever. It's gonna take.
Dude, right? NBA on TNT, right?
It's gonna take more than just the Black commentators and the social justice advocates and the Stephen A. Smiths. It's gonna take non-Black, non-persons of color speaking up and saying, we don't want to be on the bigoted side of the issue. We don't want to help perpetuate systems that are oppressing people. It's not the society we want to be. It's not the sport that we want to play. It's not the sport. Thank you, Kenny Smith. It's not the sport that we want to watch. That's what it's going to take.
And like I said, I never thought that I would be having this conversation because, again, when I was growing up, it was drilled into my head that looking like me, I don't talk about skin color. I don't talk about race. But you have to. And that's what I learned over the last year and a half of my life is that having these conversations is so important. Being willing to hear, like, okay, I hear you. What I just said, while it wasn't intentionally hurtful, was construed this way. And I can't tell you how to feel, but what I said affected your feelings.
And think about how we started the conversation on sports and race, that particular element. I said I don't necessarily believe that like Shikari Carr is it is
Shikari Richardson,
Richardson, I'm sorry, is like some martyr for something. I don't, right? The rules are you can't do this. and I don't think that she should have got a pass. So It's not this blanket like, oh, it's a person of color, like they must be oppressed. No, but when we peel back the layers, when we study, when we are critical, we see that there are systems that treat some folks better than others. It's that simple. And yes, there is a particular type of privilege that comes with being born in certain families and certain zip codes and speaking certain dialects. And if we could just get past that, then we can work to fix it. It doesn't mean anybody has to hate themselves or hate the blessing of the family they come from or hate their cultural identity. It just means let's work to make sure that nobody is disadvantaged because of that.
And it also ties into the idea of the competitive nature of human beings where, okay, I might have been born less economically gifted, but as long as I'm better than the group right below me, I'm doing fine. We got to stop thinking like that, because what ends up happening is you draw these racial lines a lot of the times, and some of the worst offenders are the ones who are of that second class, that one right above the bottom, because they don't want to be the bottom.
There's always a blame game.
Always.
It's always a blame game. Like blame precedes resentment. I mean, and I know this is not trying to leave the politics out of it, but it's like whenever you see these fissures and these divisions and these conflicts, there's always some element of blaming someone. Like historically, it's always blame. You look in parts of the world where there's genocides and major conflicts with races and ethnicities and groups of people. There's always some element of blame. This group did this. This group took this land. This group is responsible for this war. This group is responsible for this bad stuff. This group is crossing the border and raping women. This group is doing this. This group is doing that. There's always a blame element. And
because it allows people to unify behind a common enemy.
Absolutely. It otherizes. Yeah. Somebody has to be responsible for our issues. And if we can place blame on them, that's an easier target than actually fixing the system. It's easier to do that than it is to fix the problem. Just put blame on somebody. Lock them up, deport them, send them back. That's so much easier than like the hard work of studying and, funding schools and doing the social services and all. That's hard.
It's easy to stay ignorant. It's easy to stay ignorant.
Yeah. Same thing.
Rather than to take the time and educate.
Yeah. It's easier to say that there's not enough qualified black coaches than it is to like do the hard work of taking away the impediments to some of those people getting coaching jobs. Same idea. So
one final thing, because I know Jason really wants to hear this. So again, there was an NFL story. They were doing a lot of the research as far as former players being concussion tested, right, for all kinds of long-term issues. And as it turns out, a lot of the people that got paid out were white, because when they set the original numbers, black NFL players were given a lower starting point, so therefore the gap wasn't as huge. And that story has been swept under the rug drastically.
I think it's just the conversation is so saturated. There's so many things to talk about. I think that's all it is. I read that story a couple weeks ago, and I was like, another situation. Another one. Another one. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. It was sent to me by someone in a different Easttown school district. And I opted not to talk about that at the school board meeting because I didn't think it was relevant, but just another issue.
And, we've talked, believe it or not, for an hour and a half on this.
Wow.
And I'm looking at the little clock over here. It's been an hour and a half. And we've jumped around from issue to issue, and we've tried. The other thing that I have learned is the reason why nothing gets solved is because It's so easy to go off onto this tangent, to talk about this, to talk about this. Like, and I was even guilty of it tonight. I went from, we're going to talk about racism, and then I spent a solid 15 minutes talking about men versus women in sports. That's an issue, and it's a very important issue. But it's not this issue that we're spending. I think that we have to hone in and fix things, or try to fix things one at a time before we get distracted by the other issue.
You sound like me.
I've worked with you for 2 years.
You definitely got that from me. That's definitely Kyle Boyer talking.
100%. There's a reason why I brought you on tonight, my friend.
Joking.
But let me tell you, I really appreciate you coming on and spending your Monday night with me. I know it's the summer and we just got done a year of virtual teaching, but you spent an hour and a half talking into a screen with me, and I do appreciate you.
Man, the amount of times we pop into each other's room to have these conversations.
Yeah, we do. All
day. Virtually, too.
Yeah, I definitely found your code a couple times. I was like, hello. So this has been Chips and Dish talking about racism in sports. We do a sports show every Monday night. This is the first time we've really jumped into a big, heavy topic like this. I can pretty much guarantee you it will not be the last, because I feel that we got something done a little bit tonight. And I know I want to thank everyone for tuning in and commenting in, like, subscribe. Kyle Boyer is the man over here. I appreciate you.
No, thanks for the opportunity.
And the comments rolling in are saying it too.
Thank you.
All right, let me pay the bills, and then we'll end it with a commercial that does not fit the tone of what we just did at all.
Do I get some Manscaped stuff too? Can I get some Manscaped gear?
Yeah, for sure. Maddie says, definitely do another one. My twin, and just so you know, I tell everybody this: Manny is he is my Latino twin. He was left in to cook a little bit longer.
I thought we were twins.
We are. So Manny and I go way back to the Kutztown days where we were both tour guides, and we would start every tour like, yeah, we're twins. I'd be like, twin. Right? We would be like the yin yang twins. And the joke is that I was taken out really early and he was left in the cook. So that's Manny. Manny's my boy. I almost joined the Latino fraternity back in college, where my brother name would have been Token. Yeah. Twin, no triplets. Yeah, there's no justice up in here. We had a triplet for a while too. Yeah, Kyle, I'm going to ready for this because people want to know a little bit who you are. So I'm going to make this really easy for the people here. This is how you follow him. Ready? There. Super difficult. At Kyle Boyer. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Every Monday night we do this. Tuesday nights is the fantasy golf and gambling show, Fairway to Heaven. Wednesday nights is our All About the Birds Eagles weekly report. Thursday is our soccer show, Across the Pitch. So, we have a lot of great programming here. We have Birds, Beers, and BS, which is our football and drinking show. We have a lot of really good programming here. So like, subscribe, retweet, follow. It's all good up in here. Our sponsors, once again, Statement Games, a fun, free twist on fantasy sports. Link in the bio. OddsJam.com, using their arbitrage calculator to not use money. Link in the bio. AATbirds.com/shop for all of our designs. Again, please support local small podcasts. That way we get bigger and can produce more awesome, amazing quality content for you. 99jersey.com. Use the code AATbirds20 for a 20% discount at checkout. And of course, manscaped.com. Use the code AATbirds for 20% off. Your balls will thank you. Normally we end every show with, go Birds. That's a pretty easy one. We also end every Chips and Dish with, we're out of beer, so we're out of here. But I've been drinking water all night. So I'm going to end with this. I'm going to quote Nelson Mandela one more time. Sports has the power to change the world. Remember that, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Peace. Summer's coming. Are you ready to unveil your beach bod?
You're in luck. Our friends at Manscaped just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Complement your summer bod with a trim from the leaders in male grooming. The sun is shining and calling your name, fellas. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for hot guy summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code AATBirds. It's time to bundle up with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. First off, the new Performance Package 4.0 includes the Lawnmower 4.0. This trimmer is insane and, dare I say, the GOAT of ball trimmers. Yes, I said it. The 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor and a new multifunction on-off switch and can engage a travel lock and gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Not to mention, it's waterproof. Want to take your grooming game even further to the next level? The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and ear. Seal the deal with Manscaped's liquids formulations. Before heading outside, use Crop Preserver ball deodorant to keep you on your game in the heat. Then, after trimming the lawn and whacking the weeds in the heat, give your beach balls a boost and use Crop Reviver. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0. Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Bring your comfort and boxers to another level. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code AATBirds at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code AATBirds at manscaped.com. Escape the shrubs and weeds this summer and shine with Manscaped.